Hi, welcome to another video from Howell Race Artist. I hope this finds you well wherever you are in the world. In the last video, which was some time ago now, and I do apologize for that, I started a painting of what I termed a classic British landscape. Sort of landscape that's been painted in British art for hundreds of years. It happens to be an area called the Lumsdale Falls near Matlock in Derbyshire, in the Midlands of England, and it's an area that I know reasonably well and love a lot. So in the last video, if I can change to my screen, there we go. I painted the bottom part of the falls. Now, if you remember, if I turn the background on, that's the whole of the image, and in that first video I just painted the bottom part of the falls and the surrounding rocks and little bits of vegetation. I enhanced the amount of water, if you remember. So if I turn the paint layer on and off, oops, need the background on first. If I now toggle the paint layer, you can see I've subtly added to the amount of water that was coming down the falls. We'd had a dry summer. I took this photograph, a dry spring, I should say. I took this photograph in May of this year, 2022, and there wasn't a great deal of water compared to previous years coming down the falls. So I had to do a little bit of enhancement, but that's part of the great part of the art. You can do that sort of thing. That's where we got to. Now the next part that I did was paint the upper part of the falls. So if I can move to that, here you can see I've painted the upper part of the falls, and again I've sort of added to the amount of water that's coming down the falls. Sorry if you heard that bong as a message went off on my computer. So yes, I've added to the amount of water that's coming down the falls, just to make it a little bit more representative of a normal year. In the next step beyond that was to paint the surrounding valley, the bulk of the surrounding valley, which I've done in this image. And if you remember, if I go back to the previous one, this rock face over here, another sort of more rugged rock face on the left hand side of the image, and I put those in there, and I've painted them quite loosely. Anyone who's familiar with that sort of landscape will recognize that straight away, but I didn't want, frankly, to put a great deal of detail into the surrounding areas. But as an experiment, I painted most of it quite loosely, but I did paint the center section that I'm indicating with my cursor. These rocks just between the upper and lower parts of the falls. I did paint those in rather more realistic detail, and I wasn't really that happy with it. The point of view, the point of the picture, the point of the painting is not the detail of the mossy vegetation on those rocks. That's sort of neither here nor there. So I determined, having done that, to actually probably pull that detail back. So the next step was to paint the rest of the natural part of the valley. So I've gone from that to that. Painted in these rocks here, this tree on the left hand side of the image, and the vegetation, which is at the back center, the top center, which is very brightly lit in the original photograph, because it is up in the sunshine, in a higher part of the valley which doesn't have so much tree cover. But I painted it all fairly loosely. Now, when I came to and I painted out these rocks as well, sort of, and I frankly I prefer that. It just seems to work that bit better for me. It takes attention away from those rocks. An interesting part of painting this area up at the top here was that if I zoom in on it, you can see I've painted it very loosely. You know, it sort of doesn't look like anything particularly at that scale. But if I go back to that, it's quite convincingly vegetation. It's just one of the things that works with painting. And that left me with the old ruined building, which was one of the industrial revolution era buildings that still exist in the valley. And that is it's an intruder in the overall scene. It's everything else is natural except for that. And well, I decided to paint it though in a reasonable amount of detail. And there it is. And it's obviously a building. I hope you see that anyway. To me, it's obvious anyway. Um, it's linear, very linear. It's obviously got doors and things on it. Um, it's clearly uh, a building. It looks ruined, but I suppose, well, yeah, that's not totally clear. But it's sitting there as a bit of a, don't want to say an eyesore, but a bit of a something that is contrasting with the rest of the valley. And to me, that's the story of this, that a sort of underlying story behind this painting. You've got the lovely waterfall, which is the first thing your eye will go to when the first time you see this painting. Um, because there's of the lack of detail in the surrounding rocks, and the fact that they're dark, your eyes are not going to tend to be distracted to them. So you're going to go to the waterfall first of all, and then you're going to, as your eyes travel up the waterfall, you're going to see the building at the back, and it's going to jar, and it should jar because if you go there in person and see this view, the building does stand out as something which is just totally different to the rest of the valley. So at this stage, in theory, the painting is complete. But as I looked at it, I wondered about the tree at the back left of the image. And I wondered if, by representing it in a bit more detail, I would add another layer to the story of this image. So if the first part of the story is the lovely waterfall, and the second part is the very brightly lit tree at the back of the image, which you would see after you'd seen the falls, is the third part of the story nature almost reasserting itself um, after the industrial period in the valley. And so I did do another version of the painting where the tree is much more detailed. Now in the first version, you could be forgiven for not even realizing that's a tree. It could just be a weird shaped piece of rock. Clearly here it is a tree, even though you can't see the leaves and the upper part of it. It's a very tall tree. It's clearly been there for a long time. It's seen a lot of the history of the valley, I would guess. But it's now clearly, to me anyway, a third level in the story of this painting, of the valley reasserting itself after the industrial period. That's whether you like that version more or that version, I think is very personal. I like both, but I like the extra level, the extra dimension uh, that the painting the tree in a little bit more detail gives to the story of the painting. Whether people would see that or not, I don't know. Perhaps many wouldn't. Perhaps some would. I don't know. But those sort of choices are the sorts of things that actually give me a great deal of pleasure in painting, an extra level of pleasure over and above photography, where you can do a certain amount of manipulation to tell a story, but with painting you do have a lot more freedom to tell the story that you want to tell, rather than just tell the story of the image on the day that you took it. So I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found it pleasant and pleasing. And I don't honestly know what I'm going to paint next for you in this video series, but I'll put a post up about what it is before the next video comes out, and so you can see what I'm going to be painting next. I think that's all for now. Thank you very much indeed for your patience. 12 minutes video is fairly long for people to look through, I know, but I hope you found it useful. So until we speak again, God bless, and I hope you have a great week. Thank you. All the best now.